So you made a good point before
Mm-hmm.
when you spoke about when people get together, it's like now they're trying to rediscover and redefine things, which I understand,
Mm-hmm.
but it's creating like a chaotic situation between when two people are trying to date or looking to move into a relationship where you don't really know what to expect from the opposite sex or what to expect from the same sex if that's what you're doing, where you don't really get like, what is my role here, what is your role here, we're just gonna kind of figure out what you like, see what I like, and see if that works. Whereas, doing a more traditional type of setup where it's already understood, this is the role that I'm gonna take on, and then this is the role you're gonna take on. In this modern world, bringing that together, because I'm just of the mind that, things that have shown to stand the test of time, they work. And not to say that things didn't have kinks that need to be worked out. It's not to say that. The point is that if we know there's a particular, blueprint that we can follow, that we can tweak for the modern day world, then, why not follow that? Especially now, since there are so many different, issues going on between people that are trying to get together and move towards building a life together.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I feel like it's very easy to want to look to the bad of whatever situation, right? So, okay, you speak about gender roles, you talk about people who have abused those roles in the past, right? And then we speak about these people as if it was the majority, right? So now all of a sudden, every man was abusive.
Right.
Every woman was so weak and just docile and never, was able to speak or anything like that, right? And just wanted so badly to go to the factory or go clean toilets or go to work, right? And I think that we do ourselves a disservice when we try to rewrite history in that way, right? So we understand that, yes, there are certain things that, just every human being should be afforded, right? Like respect and, not to be abused, not to be taken advantage of, not to be used, right? So I think that when we talk about roles, we should be able to move past that aspect, because that should be like a general understanding, right? So that shouldn't be something that we have to nitpick and debate, right? If you are an abusive person, then you don't need to be like in control.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And a woman does not need to be with you, or a man does not, whoever doesn't need to be with you if you are somebody who would abuse any kind of power that you have in a relationship.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's the basic thing for me, is that when we talk about gender roles, we tend to talk about the bad, but in my opinion, I think that gender roles lead to efficiency. Everybody's not exhausted from trying to do everything to prove, and I feel like there's this kind of, and I don't know where it comes from, I don't know if it's the media or if it's just history or whatever, but it's kind of like a petty spirit, like if I have to do it, you have to do it, right?
Yeah.
And even some people will say, well, even if one person is working and one person is staying home, you still expect the person to stay home too. If I'm working 8-9 hours a day, then you better be working. You know what I'm saying? It's like you want to make sure like the suffering is equally spread around, and that's not loving. It's not freeing. It's not like protective. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that gender roles done properly allows for each person to have the time to rejuvenate,
Absolutely.
and think and feel relaxed at some point, in their day, every day.
Absolutely.
You know?
There's like, to touch on, to add on to what you're saying, even when we talk about just how we hold families in a high esteem, Whereas you'll hear the mentalities and the rhetoric now where I can do more than just focus on family, or I want to, I want to contribute to the world more than just taking care of my family or being my family being the center of my world. But what's interesting is that I see, just my perspective, and that we share that, is family is extremely important, and I feel as though everything starts in the home, where it does take a village. That's very true. And the village is like an extended family in a sense. However, in your own home, you want to make sure that what you're bringing, what you're cultivating inside the four walls, your four walls, when it leaves those four walls, what are you bringing into the world? Like, how are you cultivating that environment in your home? And I think that what's more important than your family,
right?
Especially when you are raising your family up and you have the dynamics between two people, and third and fourth, when you build a larger family, then you can go out into the world and communicate with people because you have something at home that you can also communicate with, where it's not like I'm trying to escape home to get out to the world. Personally, I think it should be the other way around. You want to escape the world to come home to your family, where you kind of recharge your battery and get back out, get back out there. And also, when we speak about all the bad sides about having a traditional setup where it's always attached to something abusive, or they stayed together 50 years, but what about when he or she was cheating, or mostly just he was cheating for 30 of those years and she just stood by him. It's interesting how instead of just saying we want something different, we'll have to throw shade on a traditional way of a family dynamic. And here in this modern world where we have so much information in front of us, where we can, kind of look more into everybody's lives because they kind of put it out there, the examples that we see that may not be as great tend to be the generalization of everything involved in that dynamic. So if you see, a traditional setup where it's like, hey, this is what I do, this is what she does, this is what, he does, vice versa, it's automatically, it must be some type of abuse going on.
Right.
It's interesting how we do that in the modern world, and it's confusing, it's kind of frustrating, but I think it's important to always give an example, to always, have some sort of, or just example of, it doesn't necessarily have to be an abusive or messed up situation for things to be traditional.
And I think you made a few good points. First, I'll say that it bothers me when people say like, just, I want to be more than just a mom, just a wife, or just a homemaker, as if, because, listen, be who you are, do what you want to do. Ultimately, everybody has to make decisions for their own personal lives, right? But when you minimize, as if taking care of your family is like a side thing, right? That's something people tend to make it seem like that's just something that comes natural, right? It's just something, you don't need to learn how to be a homemaker. You don't need to know how to be a wife. You could just be a wife, that ain't nothing. It's just do that, right? But you need to go to school to learn how to bartend.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, to change the world, I feel like we kind of act against our own best interest a lot of the time, and we do it because we are so busy making that excuse, because we don't, when you're in a world where everybody is like, this should come naturally, right? And then it doesn't necessarily, then we make it seem as though it's not that big of a deal, it's not necessary, right? Because in my opinion, I feel like, it's an insecurity, like, well, nobody did actually teach me, but it'll come if it comes, but when you focus, you get what you focus on, and so when you focus on, well, instead, I'm gonna get all the degrees, I'm gonna apply for all the jobs, I'm gonna do, you know what I'm saying? You have to recognize that you're sacrificing something, you're minimizing something, and I think it's just important to be honest about the fact that you can't do it all, right? And so that's the That's one major pet peeve I have with it. It's just like the minimizing of it, the just the this, you know, because it's literally the most important role that you have. You are cultivating life. You know, you are nurturing like future generations through the people that are in your house right now.
Absolutely.
You know, the things that you teach your children, from down to the way that you manage the household, down to the way that you wash the dishes, or, you know, whatever. You know, the museums. I still remember going to the shrine when I was younger. You know what I'm saying? And that'll be something that we take our children to and be able to like explain things, you know. And these are like small but impactful family traditions.
Absolutely.
You know, so that's nothing to minimize.
Yeah.
And you know, like so that's one thing that bothers me. And then the other thing is that I think that when we talk about the negative side of, let's say, traditional roles, right? So you might see, you like you said, you hear people, oh, they stayed together for 50 years, but he was beating her, he didn't let her do it. I think number one, I feel like, of course that happens, right? And it happens today with independent women who go to work and they pay all the bills or half the bills, and you know, they get beat up too. You know what I'm saying? So we can't make it seem as though it's only this scenario where abuses occur, right?
Absolutely.
But I feel like just if we take even like the dramatics out of it, we still look through at things through a specific lens, right? So if I say, my husband goes to work and I stay home, and I cook every night and I make sure the clothes are folded or whatever. Oh my God, I just can't believe it. I can't deal.
Right.
You know, it's like she's so subjugated. He just don't want her to be outside the house. I go outside the house all the time.
Right.
You know, like, what do you mean? Like, I enjoy not having somebody who I don't know, who is not necessarily like of my kind, telling me what to do. I prefer to stay home. You know? I prefer to be out of that rat race. I prefer for my husband to be out of that rat race. You know?
Yeah.
So to me, I feel like it's the lens that you choose to look at it. And why is that the choice? Why is it that unless I am out here in the world being equally as abused as everybody else who complains about the system daily?
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
You complain about the system, you complain about your job, you can't stand waking up, can't stand going to sleep, you can't stand doing anything. But when I feel fortunate enough for my husband to remove me from that situation, now all of a sudden I'm a caged bird that can't sing. Like,
well, you know, it's a very good point. You know, and it's also, you know, as a man, a form of protection to say, I know what it's like going out into this world and dealing with the dynamics that I have to deal with, and you know all the different microaggressions and the blatant disrespect. You know, not necessarily it's always direct in my face. You know, as a man, we don't really have to deal with it on the level that a woman would have to deal with it, especially a black woman. So knowing that my wife isn't, you know, put in positions to where she feels so uncomfortable in this world that she just has to do under the you know, I guess the understanding of her being strong, where I can put up with it and I can deal with it. Whereas, you know, as a man that one of his priorities is to offer protection, to give protection where you don't have to worry about those dynamics. You know, I'll take that on to the point to where I don't have to take on anymore. And, you know, we can, you know, create as we go. But, you know, it's like just as a duty, you know, provide, protect. But protect from what? It's not always a protect in the sense where, you know, somebody's coming to rob us or whatever have you. It's different types of protection, which is a role that, you know, that I stand on that men should do. And that is not something that we should be compromising about, you know. But I wanted to touch on, you know, something earlier that you talked about. You mentioned about how people feel like they don't need to be taught certain things, right? So if you want to go out into the world and do and live that type of life, which I understand. But you do understand if you want to be a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever have you, to contribute to the world in that way, you have to be taught how to be that.
Right.
You have to go for school or pick up a trade. And I think that for some reason we don't want to look at the family dynamic the same, especially when we talk about marriage. You know, it's like, especially now since many have lost like the blueprints on what you have to do, right? Being consistent, you know, being kind, being courteous, being respectful, but also on the certain duties that you want to do and why, you know, you can still be taught these things, especially because it seems like it's almost like a lost art.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't even understand the certain things that are important that you have to continuously do on day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis, or monthly basis, or whatever have you. So understanding that, you know, you still can be taught how to be a proper spouse.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you can be taught how to be a proper lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
or, you know, a chemist or a dentist or whatever trade that you get into. So it shouldn't be any different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the love factor is something that's going to come natural. But as far as, you know, how do you sustain it and how you make sure that you stay on course to get to your bigger goal, it's nothing wrong with being taught certain things by, you know, people or groups of people who have been doing it successfully for generations.
Exactly.
You know?
I think that, you know, so one example that comes to mind is like a dowry, right? I feel like now when people speak about, and we tend to speak about it, you know, more in like countries in Africa and in places where it's still kind of like prevalent, you know. But the way people speak about dowries is, oh, he's paying for her, right? Because we have this lens that we see things from. Now, my thing is, I think the lens comes from media, television, you know, especially American media. I don't care how, you know, woke or whatever you live in America, you are impacted by American media.
Right.
Period.
Right.
You know, and I think that is where this idea comes from, like the way that we choose to look at a dowry, right? But when we speak about protection, like a dowry is simply like kind of like insurance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in America, people say, well, what happens if he beats you? Or what happens if, you know, he cheats on you, or he just ups and disappears?
All right.
Well, or whatever, you know, the situation gets to a point where you are no longer happy, right? Or you feel like you need to leave, right? Okay, well, this insurance
Right.
is here, right?
Yeah.
This dowry has been paid. So this is to say, you know, if at any time, you know, it gets to a point where you are beyond like control, right?
Right,
You know,
yeah.
there is something in place that allows an exit.
Right, like a fail safe.
Right, there's a fail-safe, right? And so the way we look at it and the way that it traditionally, so when you talk about, you know, the way things have been convoluted and kind of lost the lost art, that's like an example that I can say, you know, is like, why do you look at it from an abusive lens, right? And I think that still goes back to why it's important that we actually focus more on family. You know, because we say it all the time, right? If you're religious, you say God, family, work. I don't know what you say. God, family,
That's the goal,
right? But we are very quick to say family first, right?
Yeah.
But there are so many small things that fall to the wayside because how much time do you actually spend with your family? You know? I also think that on the subject of protection, let's just be very literal. Let's be literal about the situation, right? If your wife is somewhere away from you, okay, let's just have an example, right? Your wife is in an office building. There's an active shooter, right? She calls you, texts you back. Oh my God, I don't know what to do. Where do I go? What are you gonna tell her?
You gotta ask somebody that's there.
You don't know anything about where she is at. You don't know anything.
Yeah.
Like, that is an actual situation where you are unable to protect her. Now, can you be with your wife 100% of the time? No, but you know, you can minimize certain things.
Absolutely.
And I also feel like protection is not just about violence. You know, I think that for me, if I can use us as an example, I I feel highly protected throughout this pregnancy. You know, I feel like I am protected from, you know, stress-related loss.
Right.
You know, I've been protected from that. I've been able to highly monitor, you know, my body, my blood pressure, my weight, all of these things, my stress level, and that's the thing that I want to emphasize. You know, I've been able to like highly monitor that because I have not had to deal with outside stressors outside of the home.
Right.
You know, and the only person that I have had to deal with is somebody who understands the importance of protecting this body.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
So in the world, what you hear is pregnancy is not a disability, pregnancy is not a handicap, but my back hurts. You know what I'm saying? So if you're forcing me to put stress on my body, pressure on my body, pain on my body, you know, because ultimately, if I lose a baby, it doesn't matter to, you know, whatever boss that I had, they might send me a card, but it's not stopping no show.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or anything, if anything happens, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that protection comes in all kinds of ways, but in order to be able to be protected, you have to allow yourself to, I don't know the word, to submit. Like, I don't know what the word is.
That's like a taboo
you know?
word to use now, but absolutely. But you know, as we move further along and we you know, just showing the world just like an example. You have to show by example, I guess, lead by example in certain aspects. But I did want to, so it's so interesting how, you know, you'll hear, you know, one thing about, I guess, the traditional role setup is, or even back to before, I don't want to go too far ahead. So with now we talk about, you know, family and family first, but the rhetoric is almost, you know, it's like everybody that's blood is not family kind of thing, because I'm not really how it works outside of the black dynamic. You know, I can only speak to our dynamics, but we have so many splintered and broken families, and it's now the rhetoric is like, you know, just because your blood don't make you family kind of things. Like, we understand what we're saying, but the fact that we have to say it shows that so many families are broken apart. And I think that, I don't know if it all starts with the marriage dynamic, but it just goes to show how family, we say it's the first, you know, family first, but we're falling away from that. You know, it's like we allow certain things to, you know, bring bad energy amongst us, in the ways of the world helps that. You know, like I said, media and where we at with, you know, influence. But also, you know, us men, so it's always like, you know, woman, get there, make me a sandwich, right? Get there, you know, but that's the first thing that comes to the mind. If you talk to, you know, another man or something about, you know, I have a stay-at-home wife, or he's like, oh, yeah, go make me a sandwich. It's like, that's the first thing that comes to a lot of, you know, men's minds. And I think that just the thought of that shows the perspective of what that means, right? It's not necessarily all about how it should be, about the reasonings behind that and what we're trying to cultivate and create. It's about control, and that is like just another unhealthy dynamic. Just if someone were to say, you know, oh, you stay at home, must be beating on you, because just how the aspect of a man who would just say, make me a sandwich, you know, or what you doing in here with shoes on in the kitchen. You know, it's like, but it's interesting how our minds go there.
And why? And so that's an important question to ask. Why, right? Because if you say, get in there, make me a sandwich, we've all heard that, right? We've all heard barefoot and pregnant. We've all heard these things. Like, that's not just something that we just woke up one day and said, wait. You know, like, no, we got that from somewhere.
Right.
the media, like, whatever media you choose to ingest, you know. And I think it's important to acknowledge, like, why do I feel this way? And is what I feel logically, right? Because your mind is going to try to make, I firmly believe that your mind is constantly trying to rationalize your reality.
Absolutely.
You know? So the things that you say, your mind is like constantly trying to defrag and try to understand, okay, so she said this, she's behaving this way, so, you know, this must not, this must compute or must not compute in some kind of way, right? So when we say things like, I'll speak, you know, on women's, you know, some things that I hear from women like, I don't need anybody, I just take care of myself, and, you know, blase, blase. But then to me, I feel like in the honest moments, when you're saying that you just need help and you wish you had somebody to, you wish you didn't have to handle everything all the time and everything else, you know, like, how does that reconcile, you know? Why is it that it's so easy to say how you don't need anybody,
Right.
but then in the moments when you are quiet, you can understand that, like, look, this is not working.
Right.
You know, and why is it that you can recognize this is not working for me, and then tomorrow be back on your I don't need anybody kick, you know?
Yeah, it's just going into those different zones.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what's important is, you know, we talk about freedom, right? So even with the traditional setup and traditional way of going about things, ultimately we're all searching for some type of freedom. And, you know, I think it's important that, you know, even as us men, that we strive to, you know, create our own businesses, you know, or create avenues and lanes that we can, you know, pass down to generations coming after us so they can drive down, in a sense, where even us, when we have to go out and deal with the world, we can make that experience easier, you know, whereas even yourself, if you have to go out into the world and you're dealing with certain things, and it's even better when I myself can minimize those stresses, so when I come home, I don't have the weight of the world on my shoulders in that sense, where it makes it easier even in the household, because you know, energies don't lie, you know what I mean? So even when our wives are in that place where they feel like, you know, I wish he was here, or things of that nature, even understanding when I'm out in the world working and, you know, or modern day hunting, you know, and bringing home the bacon or whatever have you, the turkey bacon, right? But bringing that home, but understanding that I am not in such a stressed environment to where when I come home, I'm bringing it with me.
Right.
You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, it's about upholding those traditional values in this modern day world. And hopefully, you know, those who also hold those near and dear, you know, can also be examples and sources of positivity to show that, you know, it's possible. Everything is not a toxic thing. Everything doesn't come from a place of negativity and abuse to where, you know, we're looking to break certain generational curses, you know, as a people that we've been passed down, that we want to, you know, build upon our, you know, I guess our historical legacies. And, you know, turn into family traditions and family legacies as well. So, yeah, I love it.
I love it too. I
All right.
agree.